What if I told you that the moment you open your eyes tomorrow morning, you'll have exactly 60 minutes to make 5 simple decisions that could literally save your life? And what if I told you that right now, as you're watching this video, 90% of you are unknowingly setting yourselves up for a stroke within that first precious hour of every single day? My name is Dr. Chen, and I've spent the last 25 years in emergency medicine, watching brilliant, vibrant people arrive at my hospital with strokes that could have been prevented. Not with expensive medications. Not with complicated procedures. But with simple awareness of what their bodies were trying to tell them weeks, sometimes months before disaster struck. Just last Tuesday, I had a patient who changed everything about how I talk to people about stroke prevention. Margaret, 73 years old, grandmother of 6, came to my emergency room because she couldn't understand why she kept dropping her coffee cup. Not once. Not twice. But every morning for a week. Her daughter brought her in, worried it might be arthritis. But when I examined Margaret, I found something that made my heart race. You see, Margaret's hands weren't weak. Her grip was fine. Her arthritis was actually better than most people her age. But when I asked her to reach for a pen on my desk, something fascinating happened. Her brain knew exactly where that pen was. But her hand landed 2 inches to the left. Every single time. It was like watching someone try to touch their nose with their eyes closed. Except Margaret's eyes were wide open. That's when I realized Margaret was experiencing what I call invisible strokes, tiny disruptions in blood flow to her brain that were so subtle, so quiet, that even she didn't recognize them as medical emergencies. But her brain was screaming for help in the only way it knew how. Through her hands. Within 4 hours, we discovered Margaret had experienced not 1, but 3 mini-strokes over the past 2 weeks. 3 warnings from her brain that something was desperately wrong. And here's what terrified me most: if she hadn't dropped that coffee cup, if her daughter hadn't insisted on bringing her in, Margaret would have gone home, followed her usual morning routine, and likely suffered a massive stroke within the next 48 hours. But that's not what happened. Because we caught it in time. We caught it because someone finally listened to what her body was trying to say. This is why I'm here today, talking to you through this screen. Because I need you to understand something that could save your life or the life of someone you love. Strokes don't just happen. They announce themselves. But they speak in a language most of us were never taught to understand. The human brain is the most sophisticated early warning system on the planet. It's constantly monitoring, constantly adjusting, constantly protecting you from dangers you don't even know exist. And when something threatens its blood supply, its lifeline, it doesn't wait for permission to send distress signals. It starts communicating immediately through your body, through your movements, through sensations so subtle that most people dismiss them as nothing more than getting older. But here's what I've learned after treating thousands of stroke patients. The brain never lies. When it says something is wrong, something is wrong. The question is, are you listening? Margaret's story isn't unique. Last month, I treated Robert, a 68-year-old retired teacher who came in because he couldn't remember how to spell his wife's name. Sarah, a name he'd written thousands of times over 43 years of marriage. He stood at the greeting card aisle for 20 minutes, staring at a birthday card, unable to remember if his wife's name had an HA at the end. His family thought it was just a senior moment. But Robert's brain was sending a very specific message. A small blood vessel in his language center was being compromised. Then there was Elena, 71, who noticed her morning yoga routine felt different. Not painful. Not difficult. Just off. When she reached for her toes, her body tilted slightly to the right. When she stood on one foot, she needed to grab the wall a second sooner than usual. Her balance instructor suggested she might need new shoes. But Elena's brain was warning her that her cerebellum, the part that controls coordination, wasn't getting enough blood. These weren't dramatic collapses. These weren't the slurred speech and facial drooping you see in medical textbooks. These were whispers. Gentle taps on the shoulder from a brain trying to save itself. And in every single case, these whispers appeared first thing in the morning. Why the morning? Because that's when your brain wakes up before you do. While you're still lying in bed, hitting the snooze button. Your brain is already running diagnostics. It's checking systems, testing connections, preparing for the day ahead. And if something is wrong with its blood supply, that's when it discovers it. That's when it starts sending signals. Think about it this way. Your brain uses 20% of your body's total blood supply. But it weighs only 3 pounds. It's like a Formula 1 engine that needs premium fuel constantly flowing through it. When you've been lying down for 8 hours. When your blood has thickened slightly from dehydration. When your blood pressure surges as cortisol wakes you up, that's when your brain is most vulnerable. That's when it's most likely to discover that something in its fuel delivery system isn't working properly. And here's what makes this morning vulnerability so dangerous. It's exactly when most people make the worst possible choices for their brain health. Choices that seem harmless. Even healthy. But that can turn a minor circulation problem into a life-threatening emergency. The first choice happens the moment you open your eyes. Most people, and I mean most people, wake up and immediately reach for their phone. They check messages. Scroll through news. Start their day with a flood of information and stress hormones. But your brain doesn't want information first. It wants circulation. It wants the blood that's been pooling in your body all night to start flowing back to where it's needed most. When you flood your just awakened brain with stress and stimulation before you've even rehydrated, before you've even moved your body, you're creating what I call a morning storm, a perfect combination of thick blood, elevated stress hormones, and increased blood pressure hitting a brain that's already struggling with its blood supply. I've seen this pattern hundreds of times. The patient who had their stroke while checking morning emails. The patient who collapsed while reading the news. The patient who felt dizzy and fell while rushing to answer a phone call. Their brains were crying out for help. But instead of listening, they added more stress to an already strained system. But here's the beautiful thing about the human body. It wants to heal. It wants to protect you. It wants to give you every possible chance to recognize its warnings and respond appropriately. The question is, do you know how to listen? Over the next few minutes, I'm going to teach you exactly how to listen. I'm going to show you the 5 most dangerous morning habits that silently triple your stroke risk after age 60. And more importantly, I'm going to give you 5 simple alternatives that can dramatically reduce your risk of ever experiencing what Margaret, Robert, and Elena went through. These aren't complicated medical procedures. They're not expensive treatments. They're simple awareness practices that honor the incredible intelligence of your brain and work with your body's natural healing systems instead of against them. Because your life depends on what happens in that first hour after you wake up. And I'm about to show you exactly why the 5 things you probably did this morning could be setting you up for a stroke you never saw coming. Let me start with the most shocking one. Because when I tell you this, you're going to realize how many mornings you've unknowingly put your brain in danger. It's something so common, so automatic, that 95% of people over 60 do it, without even thinking. And it's killing them. The first deadly morning habit is skipping water. Not skipping your morning shower. Not skipping breakfast, skipping water. Most people wake up and head straight for the coffee maker. They brush their teeth, check their phone, pour that first cup, and start their day. But they don't drink any water. And that single decision, that one moment of overlooking something so simple, creates a cascade of danger in your blood vessels that can trigger a stroke within hours. Here's what you need to understand. For the past 8 hours, while you've been sleeping peacefully, your body has been working. Your heart has been beating. Your lungs have been breathing. Your kidneys have been filtering. But you haven't had a single drop of water. Not one sip. Your blood, which was flowing smoothly when you went to bed, has gradually become thicker, stickier, more concentrated. It's like the difference between pouring honey and pouring milk. When I explain this to my patients, I often use this analogy. Imagine your blood vessels are like garden hoses. And your blood is the water flowing through them. Fresh, thin blood flows easily, like water through a hose on a summer day. But dehydrated, thick blood, it's like trying to push honey through that same hose. Your heart has to work harder. Your blood pressure rises. And if there's even the tiniest obstruction in one of your brain's blood vessels, a small clot, a bit of plaque, that thick blood can't squeeze past it. A groundbreaking study published in the European Journal of Neurology followed over 12,000 stroke patients and found something that should terrify every person over 60. 48% of first-time strokes happened in people who were dehydrated when they woke up. Nearly half. Not because of genetics. Not because of diet. Not because of exercise habits. Because of dehydration. But here's what makes this even more dangerous. Most people don't just skip water in the morning. They actively dehydrate themselves further by going straight to coffee. Caffeine is a diuretic, which means it pulls even more water out of your system. So you're taking blood that's already thick from 8 hours without water. And you're making it even thicker. I had a patient named David, 67 years old, who had this exact morning routine for 15 years. Wake up. Check emails. 2 cups of coffee. Shower. Breakfast. No water until lunch. He was proud of this routine. He called it efficiency. Until the morning his efficiency nearly killed him. David was reaching for his second cup of coffee when he felt dizzy. Just for a moment. He grabbed the counter, waited for it to pass, and went about his day. But that dizziness wasn't random. His brain was literally crying out for water. His blood had become so thick that it couldn't deliver enough oxygen to his balance center. It was a warning shot. And if David hadn't mentioned it to his wife, if she hadn't insisted he see me that afternoon, he would have had a major stroke within days. The solution is breathtakingly simple. 1 full glass of room temperature water. The moment you wake up. Before the phone. Before the coffee. Before anything else. You are literally rehydrating your brain. Giving your blood the fluidity it needs to protect you through that dangerous first hour. But water alone isn't enough if you make the second deadly mistake that I see in my emergency room almost daily. It's something that looks completely harmless. Something that actually feels good in the moment. But creates a vascular traffic jam that can trigger a stroke faster than you'd believe possible. The second dangerous habit is staying still too long after you wake up. I'm talking about sitting on the edge of your bed for 20 minutes scrolling your phone. Lying there reading the news. Sitting at your kitchen table with your coffee for half an hour without moving. It looks like you're taking your time. Being gentle with yourself. But your blood vessels can't tell the difference between being gentle and being sedentary. After 60, your blood vessels lose elasticity. They're not as springy. Not as responsive as they were when you were younger. When you go from lying down for 8 hours to sitting motionless for another 30 minutes. You create what I call blood pooling. Gravity pulls your blood down to your legs and lower body. But your aging blood vessels can't push it back up to your brain as efficiently as they used to. Think of it like this. Your circulatory system is like a water pump that's been working perfectly for 60+ years. But like any machine, it needs maintenance and gentle care to keep functioning optimally. When you stay motionless for long periods, especially right after waking, you're asking that pump to work against gravity without giving it any help. I learned this lesson in the most heartbreaking way possible. 3 months ago, I treated a wonderful woman named Patricia, 74 years old. Retired librarian. She had the most peaceful morning routine you could imagine. She would wake up slowly, stay in bed reading for about 30 minutes, then sit in her favorite chair, with tea and crossword puzzles for another hour. It sounds idyllic, doesn't it? But Patricia's peaceful morning routine was silently creating the perfect conditions for disaster. That morning in November, she finally stood up from her chair to get ready for her granddaughter's birthday party. As she took her first steps toward the bathroom, she felt a sudden weakness in her left leg. Not cramping. Just weakness. She reached for the wall but couldn't lift her arm. Within minutes, the entire left side of her body was paralyzed. What had happened was devastating in its simplicity. Patricia had developed a small blood clot in her leg during those 90 minutes of sitting. When she finally stood up, that clot broke loose and traveled straight to her brain. Her peaceful morning routine had created a mobile time bomb in her bloodstream. The tragedy is that this was completely preventable. If Patricia had known to do simple ankle rotations while lying in bed, if she had known to stand up and march in place for just 2 minutes every 20 minutes, if she had known to give her circulation gentle assistance, instead of working against it, she would be reading to her granddaughter today, instead of learning to walk again. The solution isn't complicated exercise or dramatic movement. It's gentle circulation activation. While you're still lying in bed, rotate your ankles 10 times, in each direction. Flex your toes. When you sit up, do slow shoulder rolls. Stand up gently and march in place for 30 seconds. You're not exercising, you're priming your circulatory system for a safe morning. But even if you hydrate properly and move gently, you can still trigger a stroke with the third dangerous habit. And this one might surprise you because it's something many people think is actually healthy. It's something that's become trendy. Something that younger people do with great success. But that can be absolutely dangerous for anyone over 60. The third deadly morning habit is skipping breakfast entirely. I'm not talking about having a light breakfast or waiting an hour to eat. I'm talking about the growing trend of intermittent fasting, where people wake up, drink coffee, take their medications, and don't eat anything until lunch or even dinner. Now, I want to be very clear. Intermittent fasting can have benefits for younger people with stable blood sugar and strong metabolic flexibility. But after 60, your body doesn't have the same reserves, the same adaptability, the same margin for error. And when you combine fasting with blood pressure medications, diabetes medications, or heart medications, you're creating a potentially lethal combination. Here's what happens when you skip breakfast after 60. Your blood sugar drops. Not gradually, not gently, but sometimes precipitously. Your brain, which runs almost entirely on glucose, suddenly finds itself running on fumes. At the same time, many of the medications that people over 60 take, blood pressure pills, water pills, diabetes medications, are designed to work when you have food in your system to stabilize their absorption and effects. When you take these medications on an empty stomach while your blood sugar is dropping, you can create what I call a perfect storm scenario. Your blood pressure can drop too quickly. Your blood sugar can crash. And your brain can find itself without adequate fuel or adequate blood flow simultaneously. Last winter, I treated a man named George, 71, who was trying to lose weight by skipping breakfast. He was actually proud of his discipline. He would wake up, take his blood pressure medication and his diabetes medication with just coffee, and feel virtuous about not eating until dinner. He had lost 12 pounds and felt like he was finally taking control of his health. Until the morning he collapsed in his bathroom. George's blood sugar had dropped so low that his brain couldn't function properly. But instead of feeling hungry or weak, he felt dizzy and confused. He tried to steady himself against the bathroom wall, but his coordination was already compromised. When he fell, He hit his head. And the combination of low blood sugar and head trauma created a cascade of problems that took weeks to resolve. The solution isn't a big breakfast or a complicated meal plan. It's a small, protein-rich breakfast that tells your brain you're supported. Half a boiled egg. A tablespoon of Greek yogurt. A few nuts. Just enough to stabilize your blood sugar and ensure your medications work as intended. Your brain doesn't need a feast, it needs consistency and stability. These first 3 habits, skipping water, staying motionless, and skipping breakfast, they work together to create a morning environment where your brain is struggling. But if you think these are dangerous, wait until you hear about the 4th habit. Because this one doesn't just threaten your blood vessels. It creates a stress response so powerful that it can trigger a stroke even in people who think they're perfectly healthy. The 4th deadly morning habit is something I see destroying brains every single day in my emergency room. Yet most people think they're just staying informed. It's rushing into stress the moment you wake up. I'm talking about grabbing your phone before your feet hit the floor. Checking emails while you're still in bed. Reading the news at your breakfast table. Or arguing with your spouse about the day's schedule before you've even had water. This might sound harmless compared to the physical dangers we've discussed. But I need you to understand something that will change how you think about stress forever. Psychological stress doesn't just affect your mood. It physically changes your blood. It transforms your blood vessels. And in that vulnerable first hour after waking, it can trigger a stroke just as effectively as any blood clot. Here's what happens inside your body when you flood your just awakened brain with stress. Your cortisol, which is already naturally spiking to wake you up, gets an additional massive surge. Your blood pressure, which is already rising as part of your morning physiology, jumps even higher. Your blood vessels, which are trying to adjust from 8 hours of horizontal rest to vertical activity, suddenly constrict. And your heart rate accelerates before your cardiovascular system is ready to handle it. It's like taking a car that's been sitting in a cold garage all night and immediately flooring the gas pedal before the engine has warmed up. You're asking your cardiovascular system to go from 0 to 60 when it's not prepared for the stress. A landmark study published in the Journal of Stroke followed over 93,000 people for more than a decade. What they discovered should change how every person over 60 starts their day. Individuals who experienced high psychological stress within the first 3 hours of waking were significantly more likely to suffer a stroke. Even when researchers controlled for every other risk factor, age, smoking, blood pressure, diet, exercise, genetics, everything. But here's what made this study truly terrifying. The risk was highest in people over 60. And it was highest of all in that first hour after opening your eyes. That's when your brain is most vulnerable, most fragile, most in need of gentle care. And that's exactly when most people assault it with stress. I'll never forget Maria, 69 years old, grandmother of 12, who had the most beautiful morning routine for the first 30 minutes after waking. She would lie in bed for a few minutes feeling grateful. Say a prayer. Stretch gently. Drink a glass of water. But then she would check her phone. Every morning. Without fail. She'd scroll through news. Read about disasters and conflicts and problems she couldn't solve. She'd see family drama on social media. Worry about her grandchildren. Feel overwhelmed by world events. Maria thought she was staying informed. She thought she was being a responsible citizen and grandmother. But she was systematically poisoning her morning with stress hormones. And on a Tuesday in March, while reading about a particularly upsetting news story, Maria felt a sharp pain behind her right eye. Then her vision started getting blurry. Then she couldn't remember her daughter's phone number. The stress of reading that news story, combined with the cortisol surge of waking up, had caused her blood pressure to spike so suddenly that it triggered a hemorrhagic stroke. A blood vessel in her brain literally burst from the pressure. Maria survived. But she lost her ability to read, the very activity that had caused her stroke in the first place. The solution isn't to become uninformed or disconnected. It's to create what I call a morning buffer zone, a period of calm before you engage with the world's chaos. 10 minutes of quiet stretching. A peaceful walk around your garden. Sitting with your coffee or tea in silence. Just breathing. You're giving your brain time to stabilize. Your blood pressure time to adjust. Your nervous system time to prepare for whatever the day might bring. But even if you hydrate properly, move gently, eat something stabilizing, and create a peaceful morning buffer, you can still trigger a stroke with the fifth and final habit. And this one is the most insidious, because it doesn't feel dangerous at all. In fact, it feels virtuous. It feels responsible. It feels like exactly what a healthy person should be doing. The fifth deadly morning habit is prolonged physical stillness after you're officially awake and starting your day. I'm not talking about the gentle transition from bed that we discussed earlier. I'm talking about spending the next hour or two sitting. Sitting at your kitchen table. Sitting in your favorite chair. Sitting at your computer. No real movement. No circulation activation. Just stillness. After 60. This kind of extended sitting isn't just uncomfortable, it's dangerous. Your blood is more prone to clotting than it was when you were younger. Your leg veins don't push blood back up to your heart as efficiently. Your circulation needs help. Needs encouragement. Needs movement to function properly. And when you deny it that movement, you're creating the perfect environment for the most deadly type of stroke trigger. A groundbreaking study published in Circulation tracked over 8,000 adults over 60 for 5 years. The results should change how every senior thinks about their morning routine. Those who spent more than 9 hours a day, sedentary, had double the stroke risk of those who moved regularly throughout the day. But here's the crucial detail that most people miss: it wasn't just about total daily movement. It was about when they moved. The study found that people who moved within the first hour of waking had dramatically lower stroke risk than those who delayed movement until later in the day. Why? Because morning movement activates circulation when your body needs it most. It tells your cardiovascular system that the day has begun. That blood needs to flow efficiently. That your heart and brain are depending on smooth circulation. But delayed movement, movement that happens only after hours of sitting, can actually be dangerous. When blood has been pooling in your lower body for extended periods. When small clots may have formed in your legs. Sudden vigorous movement can dislodge those clots and send them traveling toward your brain. I learned this lesson through the most heartbreaking case of my career. Thomas, 76 years old. Retired engineer. Grandfather of 8. He had what seemed like a perfectly reasonable morning routine. He would wake up, have breakfast, read the newspaper thoroughly, answer some emails, pay bills, all while sitting comfortably at his kitchen table. He was organized, methodical, responsible. And every morning, after about 2 hours of this productive sitting, he would stand up and walk briskly around his neighborhood for 30 minutes. He thought he was being healthy. He thought he was balancing rest with activity. But on a Thursday in October, Thomas stood up from his kitchen table after his usual 2 hours of sitting, and as he took his first steps toward the door for his morning walk, he felt a sudden, crushing pain in his chest. Not a heart attack, something different. He felt dizzy, confused. And then his left leg gave out completely. What had happened was devastating. During those 2 hours of sitting, a small clot had formed in Thomas's leg veins. When he suddenly stood up and started walking, that clot broke loose and traveled directly to his brain. His healthy morning walk, which he thought was protecting him, had become the trigger for a massive stroke because he had waited too long to activate his circulation. Thomas survived. But he never walked again. His engineering mind, which had been so sharp and organized, never fully recovered. The tragedy is that if Thomas had known to stand up and march in place for just 30 seconds every 20 minutes during his morning routine, if he had known to do gentle calf raises while reading his newspaper, if he had known to activate his circulation gradually instead of asking it to go from 0 to walking speed instantly, he would still be reading to his grandchildren today. The solution isn't complicated exercise or dramatic activity. It's understanding that after 60, your circulation needs constant gentle encouragement. Stand up and march in place for 30 seconds every 15 minutes. Do calf raises while reading. Walk around your house. Between activities. You're not exercising, you're collaborating with your cardiovascular system, helping it do the job it's been doing faithfully for decades. These 5 habits: skipping water, prolonged stillness, skipping breakfast, rushing into stress, and extended sitting, they don't work in isolation. They compound each other. They create a morning environment where your brain is simultaneously dehydrated, undernourished, overstressed, and poorly circulated. It's like creating a perfect storm inside your blood vessels. But here's what gives me hope after 25 years of treating stroke patients. The human body wants to heal. It wants to protect you. It wants to give you every possible chance to recognize its warnings and respond appropriately. Your brain is on your side. It's trying to save itself every single morning. The question is, are you listening? Are you helping? Are you creating the conditions for healing? Or are you unknowingly creating the conditions for disaster? The patients I've told you about today, Margaret, Robert, Elena, David, Patricia, George, Maria, Thomas, they all thought they were living normally, healthily, responsibly. But they were missing the subtle language their bodies were speaking. They were overlooking the gentle warnings their brains were sending. You don't have to be one of those patients. You don't have to experience what they experienced. You don't have to learn these lessons the hard way. Because now you know. Now you understand. Now you can recognize the whispers before they become screams. Tomorrow morning, when you open your eyes, you'll have the knowledge to make those 5 simple decisions differently. 1 glass of water before anything else. Gentle movement while still in bed. A small, stabilizing breakfast. A peaceful buffer before engaging with stress. Regular circulation breaks throughout your morning. These aren't complicated medical interventions. They're acts of kindness toward the brain that's been protecting you your entire life. They're simple acknowledgments of the incredible intelligence of your body, and humble collaborations with the healing systems that want to keep you safe. Your brain has been speaking to you every morning for years. Now you finally know how to listen.